and welcome to the next episode of the MythBusters session, where together with the top-notch industry experts, I'm debunking the most popular marketing myth. I'm your host, Olga Olifirenko, product marketing lead at Retainly, customer engagement platform from Ukraine. Today, we have two distinguished guests with us, Elliott Begley, head of marketing at Definely, and Rhys Hodkinson, chief commercial officer at Definely. Hello, thank you for joining.
Hi, Elliott.
Hey, Elliott, thanks for having us on.
I'm so happy to have you here. Definely is the incredible award-winning LegalTech company who's revolutionizing the way the documents are reviewed, drafted, and understood. Dear Elliott and Rhys, would you mind sharing a couple of words about Definely and about yourself?
Sure. Do you want to kick off, Rhys?
Yeah, sure. I'll go for it. So we Definely, I guess, a not so young legal technology company based out of the UK, although we service customers across the US, Europe, and Asia. So we were founded about 3 years ago, just roughly as the pandemic struck was when we launched our first product. We work predominantly with law firms and in-house teams using our technology and proprietary sort of machine learning techniques to help them understand their contracts and all the information that they need to work within complex documents. So that's a little bit about us as a company. I myself, so I'm a former lawyer. I was a lawyer for about 5 years. I joined Definely to help resolve some of the pain points that I encountered day in and day out when practicing law as well.
Thanks a lot. Looks like you wanted to bring the gap between the real pain points and the solution.
Correct. I think it's important, having experienced the problem myself, I can empathize a lot with the end user. And it's also important from a product perspective to be able to think about how you deploy products to actual lawyers who can be quite reticent to adopt new technologies and change generally.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Elliott, can you please share some insights?
Cool. So yeah, I'm Elliott. I am the head of marketing at Definely. So I actually don't come from a legal background. I wasn't a lawyer. I actually started my career in sales and I was selling B2B marketing solutions. And then I actually transitioned into an actual marketing role. And I joined Definely in December of 2021. And I've been here ever since.
Yeah, that would be a great combo. Lawyer plus marketing. Never met such people. Right, fantastic. So let's get right into the matter. Today we're going to debunk 3 most popular B2B SaaS marketing myths. And myth number 1 goes that inbound is the only success. So someone believe that relying solely on inbound strategy can bring tangible results. But I know that Definely has something to share with the audience in terms of combining different strategies. What's your take on this?
Elliott, do you want to kick off as head of marketing, and then I can provide some thoughts afterwards?
Yeah, sure. Of course. So with inbound only success, I think I know a lot of companies, predominantly have an inbound strategy, and I think there is a time and a place, and I think it works really well for some others, but I think for the majority of companies, ourselves included, it's not necessary. Not to say it doesn't work, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily the most effective marketing strategy. I think, especially if you are a newer business or you're a startup, a lot of the inbound stuff, it requires a lot of effort up front, and it can take a little while for you to see any results. And whilst it can be, really cost efficient and it can be very effective, unless you operate in an area that has like a lot of traffic, search intent, it can take a little while, for you to actually see results. So I think for us, for example, with Definely, our product solves a solution that a lot of the time lawyers don't necessarily know that they have. And if they don't know that they have it, they're not going to be searching for a solution. So if we were to sort of rely solely on people coming to find us, it would take a lot longer to, achieve what we want to achieve. So we have very much taken like an inbound and an outbound approach. So, and I think it's probably, for like 90% of companies, it is going to be the best way to go. I think what's great with inbound marketing is that you can be very targeted, you can be very, very specific, and you can show an audience exactly what you want them to see and put them through a journey that you've created. But a lot of the time it's how do you actually get someone to start that journey? And I think that's where outbound can be really, really effective. So, something that we'll do a lot of the time is if you have like a gated piece of content, for example, rather than just us relying on people coming to find that through, organically, which, people do, but in order to sort of like really ramp up that growth, putting some sort of outbound strategy behind it is just as effective. And I think then you can, once you've almost got that hook and you've got someone into the top of the funnel, then that's where your inbound marketing efforts can really pay off once you put them into an automation. So I think, not to say that you can't necessarily just have like an inbound strategy, but I think for most companies, and especially for us, it's just not optimal really to like rely solely on that.
I mean, maybe just to pick up on a few points Elliott said, I think an important thing he mentioned there was just around the journey. So this comes a little bit later on when we talk about running an integrated sales and marketing machine, but your approach to whether you're doing inbound or inbound outbound should also be reverse engineered from what your sales process looks like as well. So, obviously if you're a direct to consumer brand where people simply can download or access something from your website, inbound might be the way to do it because there's a sort of high traffic volume. You might have high churn rates, for example, because people just want to try something and, go out and you can play a sort of volume game. But if you were to look at our business model, we're an enterprise software company. So we sell into some of the largest corporates, financial institutions, and law firms. And regardless of what you're selling to an enterprise, be it machine learning software like we are, or if it's selling stationery or whatever it might be, trust is a really big part of that sales process. You're going to be introducing software into a huge firm's environment. They need to trust that you're credible, that you're not going to introduce any malware. You're going to go through legal processes. You're going to go through procurement. You're potentially going to go through RFPs. People internally at that organization are going to put their necks on the line to explain to their bosses or stakeholders as to why that product needs to be developed. And so you need to think that oftentimes with marketing, that will be your prospective customer's first interaction with the brand. And if you just have an inbound only engine, which is waiting for people to find you, you're not going to be able to generate that same level of trust if you don't complement it with an outbound approach. So for example, we oftentimes might do things like go to conferences, or we would host webinars, or we would host dinners with prospective customers and make them meet our existing customers. And you need to establish yourself as a thought leader so that when they hear about you and they go and then research you, your inbound engine can kick in as well. But if you don't have both, you're probably going to have a lot of people falling out of that pipeline before you can actually get them across the line as a customer.
Great insight.
Sorry, just touch on that, what you said about conferences. We've actually had customers and prospective customers say to us, like, you seem to be everywhere, you seem to be doing a lot. And I think that's where inbound and outbound can really complement each other. So we will, if we go to an event, we'll put that on our social media. If we get like an attendee list, we might serve some ads to that. And it's almost like creating a buzz so that as and when someone does actually interact with you, it's not necessarily so cold. So if you wait on someone to actually just find you and come across to finally and do that on their own, it's going to take a little bit longer. Whereas it's almost creating this effect of you're everywhere. And I think outbound allows you to do that because you can go and meet customers where they are, as opposed to waiting for them to come and find you.
Thank you for a great insight. I do like the point about creating the demand for the problem that customers probably don't think they have. And I guess combining inbound and outbound strategies could perfectly match that thing of creating a proper demand. So moving on to myth number 2, and thank you for sharing some nitty-gritty details behind both inbound and outbound strategies of Definely. We are going to myth number 2, which is independent teams better results. And here, I guess we can continue the dialogue about combining approaches and combining the cooperation of different independent teams. So what's your take on it? Can marketing and sales team work independently, or it's a myth?
I mean, Elliott can go. I could go first. So it's obviously very much a myth. I mean, having independent siloed teams within an organization is generally a terrible way to go about it. What I would say, actually, especially in the software area, it's not just about an integrated sales and marketing team. Most software companies typically have customer success teams as well. And it's actually about running a fully integrated commercial team across marketing, across customer success, and across sales, because all three of those departments are having different types of conversations with the market, with the industry, and with firms, all the way down to individuals. And so I think it's important that there are proper feedback loops between customer success and marketing, and sales and customer success and marketing and sales, to ensure that the way we are running our outbound, the way we are running our inbound, the way we are thinking about our audience, categorizing our audience, is always up to date with the market. So, to give you a sense, we would typically, as a team, sit down every quarter, so sales, marketing, customer success, and we would look at a few things. We would look at, from the sales perspective, what new features, what new products do we have coming down the line? What feedback are we getting from the market about the benefits that they're seeing in other products, or what the market's trending towards? So right now within legal technology, it's obviously things like large language models, deployment of ChatGPT. What are our opinions on those sort of things? Where do we think the sweet spot is? We will then talk to our customer success team, get a sense of which successes we've had recently with which customers, driving what results. So this customer's experienced this return on investment based on a specific project we delivered. How do we build that into our marketing campaign? How might that be useful to some of our other audiences? And if you're not closing those feedback loops, you're not going to be able to run an effective marketing campaign or an effective marketing team, because you need that feedback from the market to help the marketing team deliver content to the audiences, to make sure that content is relevant, that it's up to date, that you continue to build trust and be seen as a thought leader. So, I think if you silo your teams, you're always going to have difficulty implementing a proper marketing strategy.
I think as well, even from a brand perspective, I think there's a lot of the time a misconception that the brand is basically what you see on the website, the cool graphics, and as you scroll down. But I think, the brand is essentially every single interaction anyone has with your business, whether that is with a salesperson, whether it's what they see on their website. So I think in order to make sure that, everyone uses the same sort of language, everyone is presenting your brand the way that you want it to be presented. Everyone needs to sort of communicate with each other. And even from like a collateral point of view, the sales teams are almost, they're on the front line, as it were. And they are the ones that can tell you, what it is that your customers want to see, what it is that they actually need. It's essentially almost like free customer research. They'll tell you what sort of language they use, which, product features or which benefits it is that make them go like, oh, actually, this is quite cool. And I think if you don't necessarily have that and share resources, everything is just going to be very siloed. And I don't see a world in which it necessarily works. But as Rhys said, I think one of the biggest successes we've had is having that quarterly sit down and looking at what can we do, who needs to do what, and just making sure everyone's aligned and starting the quarter with what we're doing, and then finishing it with how did it perform, and what can we do better next quarter.
Do you have only quarter meetings, or you can suggest having like monthly or bi-weekly meetings between sales and marketing team, going through joint pipelines, I don't know, working with SDRs as well, to make sure that the scripts are aligned with the marketing strategy and the ideal customer profile is clearly defined, and that the sales team perfectly understands your sales plays, understands the industries that you're working in? So what's your take on here?
So, I mean, I think we have the quarterly meetings, obviously, to sit down and discuss these things. We have a sales marketing check-in every 2 weeks. At the same time, we are conscious of a company of just not having a meeting culture. People still have to implement and execute. There's a lot of free-flowing information that just does happen within the office. That being said, we use a tool called Confluence to make sure that we're always capturing our audiences, that we're understanding the different players, and that we sort of feeding that back to the team. So we have the quarterly catch up, and then we have one catch up every 2 weeks. Typically, though, if people have questions, they always just ask around, and we have a fairly open culture for asking questions. we are very conscious though about just meetings for meeting's sake. So if you have very targeted strategic sessions with clear agendas about what you need to do, what information needs to be passed from whom to whom, you shouldn't necessarily need to be doing it more frequently than, if not every quarter, sort of every month at least.
Thank you. Can you tell us a story or a situation, a real life situation, where collaboration between sales and marketing team led to success at Definely?
Oh, I mean, I could tell you plenty. I mean, I think, and again, maybe just going to the earlier point, the collaboration is always between marketing, sales, and customer success. I think it's really important that it's not just seen as marketing and sales, but a few examples. So we typically run quite a strong multi-threaded sales process. So that means we have to engage with different stakeholders at different points within the sales cycle. So, if you're selling to a law firm, for example, the partner at the law firm would have a different use case for your tool, mainly to retain business and impress clients, for example, whereas a senior associate or associate would want the pure productivity gain because they're typically having to do a lot of the work associated with whatever matter they work in. You'll then have an innovation manager, you'll have a procurement person, you'll have someone who sits on the budgetary side, you'll have a chief information officer, and each of them are actually looking for slightly different things within the product. So account-based marketing on that basis isn't just about serving content to an entire account, right? You want to serve very, very specific segregated content to each audience. So a few examples going back to your original question is, where, for example, we would bring on board a new customer in a new geography, let's say Australia or Canada, for example, we would then look at that firm specifically with the sales team and the marketing team. We would then map out which of those customers' competitors exist in the market. We would then look at the different titles, the different roles that we had to deal with at that law firm, because they typically are quite similar by geography, because that would be the same recruitment or HR market. And then we would then go and serve specific targeted content and ads about that win to that remaining geography. That typically led for us, for example, from going into one geography where we were able to get one of the top 7 law firms on board. And then within 3 months, based off that marketing strategy, we are now working with all 7 because we were able to leverage that win and run targeted marketing to actually get the remainder of the top end of the market. The other example is on case studies. So Elliott might have some more statistics, but case studies are typically one of the better ways to generate, warm leads, because it's actually genuine information around how people can use your productivity or use your tool to see productivity gains. So, for example, the customer success team worked really, really hard with a particular customer to build a new feature which helped increase engagement and adoption of the product. They were then able to communicate that. So again, all about closing that feedback loop. They were able to communicate that to the marketing team. We were then able to build out a case study and then use that case study to bring in a whole set of new sales qualified leads through the marketing campaign to continue to grow our top of funnel. So those are a few examples that come to the top of my mind. But Elliott, I'm not sure if there's anything in addition from your side.
No, I think you fairly covered it off. I think one thing that is maybe just sort of more generally speaking is, from a content perspective, it's similar to what you said with the case studies, working out, if there are the sales team are speaking to certain customers, prospective customers, working out exactly what they would find interesting, what content is going to interest them, what are they going to find useful. And as Rhys said, it's sort of depending on where they sit within that company. So you might have someone that is more junior compared to someone that's more senior. And whilst they're both going to get use from Definely, the use that they will get slightly varies. So it's, again, how do we actually create content that each different person that comes onto the website or interacts with the business finds it useful? And I think it's really hard to do that if you don't have open communication between marketing, sales, and CS.
So we've discussed a bit about their collaboration and about joint results, but what about joint KPIs? What's your take on this? Should marketing have sales KPIs and vice versa?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So marketing should never have sales KPIs and sales should never have marketing KPIs, but you need to be very, very clear about how you build your KPIs to go after common objectives. So you should always start with what are we trying to achieve together as a commercial team, and how does each function work together and ultimately help us achieve those goals. So, for example, you can't have a cross-pollination of KPIs or incentives, but each incentive needs to make sense when thought of in terms of that broader goal. So, one example is oftentimes in a marketing function, and Elliott can sort of talk a little bit more about this, but you might, for example, say, we need to get 4,000 marketing qualified leads a month, or every 3 months, or every 4 months. Now, if you were to actually sit back and say, well, what is the purpose of a marketing qualified lead? Well, it's obviously to start getting top of funnel so that we can turn them into sales qualified leads and ultimately close them out into new business. If you're going after a specific revenue goal and you know that you need X amount of sales qualified leads to close out that revenue, should you rather not be focusing on the ratio of sales qualified leads to marketing qualified leads, not just marketing qualified leads? It's a lot easier just to create a lead which could ultimately never close to a sale if you could actually focus on optimizing the ratio of sales qualified leads to marketing qualified leads. So I think being clever in how you think about incentives so that it tracks across each side of the funnel. So, for example, in our customer success team, one of the KPIs is generating collateral, such as case studies, video content, getting customers to agree to attend webinars, and all of those kind of things. So by incentivizing the customer success team to talk to our customers about partaking in these sort of things, then enables the marketing team to be set up for success when they want to generate content or put together collateral that kind of puts our best foot forward. So if you're going to just Google marketing KPIs and apply those without thinking about what it is that each team needs to do with respect to the other, you're probably not going to set yourself up for success. And I think the other point, conscious I'm talking a lot, but the other point is also applying it to your own specific use case. What works for us doesn't necessarily work for everyone. As I said before, being an enterprise software business means that we do have to think a lot about building trust with the end user. We're looking at, once they decide to agree to buy our product, we're looking at 4 or 5 years of a relationship with that user, right? So everything we do has to be thought of that this is going to be a 5, 6, 7 year relationship. And so trying to just do things to get a quick sale or just to get a quick burst of leads in one quarter, which might ultimately be damaging to our brand or not be aligned with generating long-term value, needs to be thought of in that context, and your KPIs should reflect that as well.
Thank you for that perspective. Absolutely, I agree. And there are some comments already coming from our audience. People are excited that we actually raised this topic about collaboration between sales and marketing, about shared KPIs or non-shared KPIs. And there is one comment I would like to ask you right now. And the question, can you recommend any tool that can facilitate or support sales and marketing function and their alignment apart from the CRM?
Elliott, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think we actually, I would say one that Rhys has already touched on is Confluence, and we almost use that as our intranet, and that is a place where we have, like a commercial page within that. And if it's essentially like, if anybody needs anything, it should be in Confluence. So I think one thing that is really important to do is almost like streamline everything. So one of the reasons I would say we don't use a lot of different tools outside of a CRM, Confluence and Slack is because you don't want to have to look in multiple places to get information. And there, I think a lot of the time there is an answer to say, oh, we just need more software, we need this software. Whereas a lot of the time, the more software, the more processes there are in place. So I think we try and keep that fairly minimal. So I think from a sales, marketing and CS perspective, Confluence is that one tool that I think we couldn't live without, because whenever we put anything, there's like a case study, or if they need a downloadable link or some marketing collateral, everything goes there. So in an ideal world, everyone that needs something should be able to just go into Confluence, download that. And I would say, outside of that, and then Slack for communication, I don't think there are too many other tools and that we really use.
I think the outside of CRM thing probably excluded the big one we use or we're implementing right now, which is Salesforce Pardot, which is their marketing automation platform. What I would say is, again, this probably goes to the point around running an integrated sales and marketing machine. If you are trying to run an integrated sales and marketing machine, but you are siloing the tools and software that they use, it's probably going to then slow down that kind of integration. So we use Pardot, which integrates with the sales CRM that we use. What that allows us to do is where we attend a conference or where we have someone come through from a campaign, we can automatically tag them as a lead, associated with the correct campaign, and sales can then automatically start working that opportunity to close. It gives us visibility of the funnel as an integrated commercial team, right? So we can see when this deal closes, what percentage of our revenue is coming from X amount of campaigns. That allows us to double down on the campaigns that are the most successful. We can see, for example, if it comes from this source, it tends to close at a shorter sales cycle than this, but this one closes at a higher average contract value. So we do want a tool that integrates with our CRM because we don't view it as a single process. I mean, we don't view it as separate processes. It is one entire funnel from the first time a customer becomes aware that we exist, all the way to when they become a customer, all the way then to when they start renewing and upselling and cross-selling across products. It is one continuous funnel. It's not segregated.
Yeah, I would suggest changing the concept from funnel to flying wheel, especially for B2B SaaS. So whenever the renewal comes in, you have to repeat all the actions, maybe with not so intense at the beginning because your audience had no idea about your brand, but still you apply almost same techniques regarding upsell and cross-sell. Right. Thank you for this perspective. And I think we're going to create a cheat sheet for marketeers who are working at SaaS businesses, because we have lots of insights today. So we are heading to the last myth for today, and we already partially touched it, which says one size fits all strategy. Can you share a specific example of how you tailored your marketing strategy to define these unique audience goals? And can other companies implement the same strategy to gain the same results?
Yeah, I'll kick off on this. So I think that this is something that a one size fits all strategy would never have worked for us. And I don't think it will work for most people, but where we have lots of different audience groups within our wider audience, they will have various needs and need various different things. So we really have to tailor every single thing that we serve to them based on their needs. So for example, we mainly work across law firms, in-house teams, and say a solo practitioner. What they need from a product might be very different, and the different use cases. So for example, an enterprise law firm, one of the struggles they might have is how do they roll out an enterprise license and actually drive adoption across a whole firm. Obviously, a solo practitioner doesn't necessarily have that same issue. So I think one of the things that we did is almost created a matrix of, okay, within our different industries or the different sorts of companies we target across one axis, and then different job titles and personas within another. So for example, within a law firm, a partner will use Definely, and so will a trainee solicitor, but they will use it in very different ways. And also the different features are going to probably, they're going to find different features more useful because of the nature of the work that they're doing. So if we just, serve the same content, target all of them with the same content, if you try and include everyone, you almost exclude everybody. So making sure that you're actually, giving content to people and that is relevant to them, I think is one way that you have to really move people through that journey. So it's something that we've done, I think, fairly well. And I think that again comes with that marketing, sales, and CS collaboration.
Yeah, maybe just picking up on a few things that Elliott said. Obviously, Elliott has the specific marketing knowledge, but thinking a little bit more high level, there's always something we've thought about a lot, actually more on the product side, is there's this quite a well-known saying, jack of all trades, master of none. And it's pretty similar with respect to trying to do a one-size-fits-all strategy. If you try to appeal to everyone, you will most likely end up appealing to no one, right? And so the way that we think about our marketing strategy is across two broad principles. So one is incentives, and then the second one is asymmetry of information. So on the incentive side, when you're trying to map out your audiences and your marketing strategy, you need to think of how is the market incentivized, how is the industry incentivized, how is each individual firm or corporation incentivized, and then how are the actual individual players and roles within those organizations incentivized. So if you take, for example, you would typically get lawyers serving at two different types of companies, right? So one would be a law firm where they would typically bill per hour and charge a client. And then the other would be in-house lawyers. So they would be the lawyers that work at banks, at Salesforce, or whatever it might be. Now, both in-house and law firms have different incentives on an aggregate basis, right? Law firms are ultimately incentivized to try win new clients, bring in revenue from clients, and that's their main focus. For them, the whole work, the organization, the work of a lawyer is seen as a revenue driver at a law firm. If you look at an in-house team, law firms historically have been seen as a cost center because revenue is driven by sales, and in-house teams are becoming more and more integrated in the business, but the lawyers are really focused on how do we increase productivity with the resources that we have, right? If you then go from a law firm basis and break it down to the individual players, you have managing partners, you have equity partners, non-equity partners, you have senior associates, trainees, innovation team members, business development members, you have procurement, you have all of these different roles. And each of them are going to think about our product slightly differently. And then you have in-house, right? So in-house, you have GCs, you have legal operations, you have the lawyers themselves. And again, each of them is going to think about our product very differently. And so you have to map out all of those players, going from the most high level down to the most granular. Once you've done that and you've mapped up your incentives, you need to start thinking about the asymmetry of information point, right? So as a startup especially, and this goes to the point Elliott mentioned about people not necessarily searching for the problem we have. When you start a company, literally no one knows about you. There's, outside of the few people starting a company, no one knows about you. The asymmetry of information between what you know about your company and what the market knows about your company is as wide as it can be. And so you need to think about having those incentives. How do we incrementally reduce the asymmetry of information? How do we generate content, generate outbound, generate inbound, so that more and more people who are playing these different roles within the market we play in become increasingly more aware of us? And that's sort of how we think about it across the incentive spectrum and then the asymmetry of information spectrum. So every single time we go to a conference or we meet someone at something and they say, hey, I've heard about you guys. You seem to be doing this or doing that and going from strength to strength. For us, that shows that we're really breaking down those asymmetry of information barriers, which is so important for us as a startup.
Yeah, it looks like a granular approach, and I guess this can be taken as a great benchmark, especially for smaller companies. Last question from my side. Do you think employee advocacy matters, even if those people understand the product on different levels, but they do communicate it outside to make sure that when you meet people, when you meet your audience during the event, you can hear, oh, we heard about you guys, you are doing this and this. So how, what's the position of employee advocacy over here?
I think it's really important, because I think a lot of the time people trust, a person as opposed to a business. So all you've got to do is take a look at, a post that we put from the Defining account and a post from Rhys's account to see which gets more likes and more engagement. So I think having that advocacy, and I think word of mouth marketing is still probably the most effective form of marketing. And I think, being at events, and especially, within the legal sector, there are, we've had a lot of referrals because people really do love the product. And I think where, again, Rhys will probably be able to speak to this more, but I think one of the most effective ways that we actually manage to generate leads is if someone has, said they've downloaded the trial, they walk past, someone else walks past, and they're like, wait, what is that? They have a look, and it's when people actually use it. And I think almost creating that word of mouth marketing is as effective as anything else that you can do. But again, it takes a little bit of time, and I think you do have to build up that awareness and almost create that buzz before that happens.
And I think also just on that point as well, and this is again going to the whole point about running an integrated engine, is that buyers have become a lot more informed than 20 years ago, right? So buyers themselves are much more aware of what's in the market. They know their systems, how things integrate. The days of someone being a charming salesperson and being able to kind of get something across the line is long gone, right? It's in how good your product is. It's the testimonials you get from people, employees, and all of those kind of things. And I think that's why for us it's so important, not only for us to be advocates of our own product, to be seen to be enthusiastic, but to also get employees of other organizations singing our praises before we even try look at a sale. Because at the end of the day, we always in any room are going to come across as having a vested interest in pushing our product. Naturally we do, but if people are hearing internally from their own employees that this would be something that would be useful, you can't beat that. So that word of mouth, but also getting employees advocating for your product before you even try push it into a sale, before you even try get into commercials, is paramount. That actually is a source of competitive differentiation, can make or break deals.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much for the session. I guess we busted all the myths and we don't have any hesitations about them any longer. I encourage audience continue the dialogue in the comments, and we'll be happy to take your questions afterwards as well. Remember that marketing is complex, and there is always something more than just meets the eye. My goal is to eliminate marketing myths one by one together with you. Thank you so much. Looking forward to our next sessions, and thank you, our dear guests, for coming here today and sharing the Define List keys to success. Thanks a lot and take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.